Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport was experiencing an unusual snowstorm, which turned the normally bustling terminal into a scene of surprising turmoil. Flight cancellations appeared on the departure boards one after another, as hundreds of stranded travelers crowded around, eagerly monitoring the changing itineraries. People clustered in close clusters, whispering complaints and trading anecdotes about delayed flights, missing connections, and the sheer irritation of waiting. The familiar aroma of pricey coffee combined with the palpable worry in the air. Among the chaos, Officer Melissa Rodriguez stood out, her outfit immaculate and neat as she fixed the collar of her jacket. She felt a temporary sense of serenity as she remembered the warm meal she had grabbed at the staff cafeteria during her little break. She had been doing security sweeps for many hours and needed a rest. Luna, her loyal K9 partner, a German shepherd with a coat as silky and black as midnight, walked beside her in perfect step. The dog, trained to notice even the smallest changes in human behavior, appeared completely in harmony with her surroundings, her posture impeccable despite the commotion. Luna, unlike many K9 units trained to detect drugs, explosives, or weapons, had received additional training in human behavior assessment. This was a unique and valuable skill, one that had already shown useful in detecting possible security concerns long before they materialized. Luna's capacity to identify minute alterations in human behavior had been perfected to the point where she could frequently discern underlying threats merely by reading the emotions, gestures, and even tone of those around her. Rodriguez had seen Luna in action many times before, but something felt different now. She couldn't put her finger on it, but she and Luna could feel the tension in the air. As they proceeded through the airport, they approached the international baggage claim section, and Rodriguez saw the first small shift in Luna's manner. Luna's pace straightened, and her ears perked forward as if she detected a faint sound that no one else could hear. Rodriguez, ever attentive, spotted the difference right away. Luna's reaction was more than just the typical awareness of a dog trained to detect potential hazards, it was something else. Something made the hair on the back of Rodriguez's neck stand up. The dog's body tensed up, and a small whine came from Luna's throat, almost like a low hum of fear. Rodriguez grimaced as her instincts kicked in. She peered about, attempting to determine the source of Luna's uneasiness. Normally, Luna would focus on someone acting suspiciously, such as someone carrying huge luggage or appearing uncomfortably. But this time, the dog was focused on a woman in her 30s. Despite the pandemonium of the airport, the woman was immaculately dressed, her fancy travel outfit not even slightly wrinkled. In her arms, she held a baby and softly rocked it in a calming motion. Rodriguez observed Luna's awareness grow. Her ears were fully forward, her entire tensed, and every muscle poised. The low growl that followed echoed throughout Luna's entire body. It was a deep, natural sound that was simultaneously unnerving and purposeful. Travelers around began to move away uncomfortably, creating an accidental circle of space around the mom and her child. The grumble gradually turned into a succession of harsh, commanding barks. The sound resonated throughout the terminal, drawing the attention of everyone in the vicinity. Phones were instantly raised to record the ruckus. Passengers began murmuring and pointing, capturing the chaos while Luna's barking continued unabated. Rodriguez felt a flush of embarrassment grow on her face as she battled to regain control of her dog. "Luna, stand down," Rodriguez demanded, her tone strong. But the German shepherd's barking didn't stop. The passion with which Luna proceeded to bark at the woman and her infant was unlike anything Rodriguez had witnessed before. Something about this situation sparked Luna's protective instincts to a level that Rodriguez couldn't ignore. The woman, evidently shocked, began to look about, her countenance changing from uncertainty to alarm. She gripped the baby tighter to her bosom, her gaze darting to the nearest exit, as if she was planning a getaway. As the barking became more intense, Rodriguez noticed the woman gently backing away, putting more distance between herself and Luna. However, the baby remained absolutely still, with no symptoms of distress or movement. The youngster appeared to have become completely unresponsive to its surroundings. Rodriguez's concern deepened. It wasn't simply the barking, there was something strange about the baby's apparent lack of responsiveness. Even when asleep, babies react to loud noises, changes in their environment, and the presence of strangers. But this baby was completely motionless. That was not typical. Martinez, the airport security supervisor, inquired, "Ma'am, is your dog okay?" His tone was concerned. "We're already dealing with a lot of tension today with all these cancellations." Rodriguez was ready to respond when Luna's behavior worsened again. The piercing barking became more insistent with each subsequent bark. Phones were raised, recording every second of the event. Rodriguez's professional demeanor began to deteriorate, but beneath the shame, an unshakable certainty crept in. Luna did not just have a random outburst. This was not an instance where the dog was overwhelmed by the airport's noise and activity. Luna had smelled something special, and her concentration on the woman and child was unwavering. Rodriguez focused her attention back on the woman. She approached her, attempting to maintain a calm and soothing demeanor. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance," she whispered, soothing the woman as she went closer to keep Luna under control. The barking persisted, and Luna was now yanking on her leash, her gaze set solely on the baby. Rodriguez has witnessed similar behavior before. Luna was indicating that something was seriously wrong. The mom, still attempting to appear calm, looked down at the infant and shifted it gently in her arms. She turned back to Rodriguez, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I don't know what's wrong with her," the woman remarked, her voice trembling just beneath the surface. "She's usually well behaved. I'm not sure why she's acting this way." Rodriguez was not convinced. Luna's actions was far too detailed to overlook. It wasn't the type of alert Luna used when there was a clear security threat. This was considerably more sinister. Rodriguez couldn't understand why this woman and her baby had stirred anything. As the mother fidgeted, attempting to soothe the baby and Luna, Rodriguez focused on the details. "Can I ask which flight you're on?" Rodriguez said, attempting to keep the conversation light, but her eyes still scrutinizing the woman for signs of inconsistencies. The woman promptly responded, "American Airlines to Chicago, then connecting to Denver." Rodriguez did not buy it. Her training had trained her to recognize irregularities, and the timing of the material didn't seem right. American Airlines canceled all flights to Chicago hours ago due to the storm. There was no chance the woman's flight was still on time. "Catherine," Rodriguez added, addressing the woman by her given name, "that's interesting because all American Airlines flights to Chicago were canceled hours ago because of the storm. There was an announcement made just a short while ago." The woman's eyes opened slightly at the announcement of the canceled flight, but she swiftly recovered her composure. "Oh, no," she blurted out, her voice a little too rapid. "I meant United Airlines. I've been so flustered today with all the changes. I've been delayed for hours." Rodriguez paid special attention to the woman. Her reaction had been too swift, and Rodriguez's suspicions grew. There was something about the woman's anxiousness and attempts to conceal contradictions that didn't make sense. But it wasn't just her remarks that bothered Rodriguez, it was how she handled the baby. Rodriguez looked down at the infant, noting that her eyes were closed and her body was perfectly still. Even when resting soundly, babies usually move, even if only little. However, this baby had not moved at all amid the hubbub. It was unsettling. Rodriguez took a long breath, keeping her tone pleasant but forceful. "Could I take a quick look at your documents?" It's standard procedure to verify information when traveling with infants, especially with all the delays today. Catherine paused for a moment, her uneasiness evident. She searched through her fancy handbag, but her movements seemed strange. The bag appeared to be virtually brand new, and her handling of it did not seem appropriate for a seasoned traveler. Rodriguez took note of the details. She was hunting for clues. "Please," Rodriguez asked. "It'll only take a moment. We just need to make sure everything is in order." Rodriguez could feel the strain mounting in her stomach. Something wasn't right. Luna, who remained focused, seems to be aware of this as well. The terminal was alive with the low hum of voices and the clattering of suitcase wheels, but Officer Rodriguez was completely focused on the woman in front of her. Catherine, or Jessica, as Rodriguez suspected, continued to fumble with her handbag, visibly uneasy. Her fingers moved clumsily, like if she were looking for something that didn't exist. Her eyes darted around nervously, yet her composure seemed forced. She was working too hard to keep control of the situation, and Rodriguez was paying attention to every detail. Finally, Catherine took a leather wallet from her bag and handed it to Rodriguez. The woman's fingers shook slightly, but she kept her cool, and Rodriguez could feel the faint tightness in her jaw. Rodriguez received the wallet, but her mind was already processing the anomalies she had seen. Catherine had stated that she was heading to Chicago, but when questioned, she rapidly changed her response to United Airlines, raising another red flag. American Airlines had cancelled all flights to Chicago that morning, but Catherine's story had not changed with the confirmation. The abrupt change in her statement seems odd. Rodriguez glanced through his wallet and took out a driver's license. It was an Ohio-issued license, which did not appear peculiar at first. Then Rodriguez noted the date. It had only been issued 14 months before, but it looked virtually brand new, no wear and tear, no creases or fading from years of use. In fact, it appeared to have never been taken out of its protective cover. Rodriguez examined the holographic features on the card, but something about them did not reflect the light properly. She sensed something was wrong, but she had to go cautiously. She couldn't make any assumptions based on one piece of evidence. The woman in front of her could be hiding something, but Rodriguez couldn't rely just on her instincts. She needed more. "Is there a problem with the license?" Catherine said, her voice tinged with anger, though she attempted to conceal it. Her gaze went uncomfortably to the ID card in Rodriguez's fingers. "I just want to make sure everything checks out," Rodriguez said, trying to appear cool and professional as her mind raced. "Do you have any identification for your baby? It's standard procedure when traveling with an infant. We'll need a birth certificate or a passport." Catherine's face tensed, but she responded quickly and dismissively. "It's in my checked luggage." The airline said it wasn't necessary for such a young child, especially since she's so small. She's 8 months old, after all. Rodriguez's skepticism grew. It wasn't uncommon for parents to be forgetful or even sloppy with paperwork, but this didn't seem right. The baby's absence of paperwork, along with the ambiguous response concerning the airline, appeared to be an attempt to distract. "And you said she's 8 months old?" Rodriguez inquired, keeping a steady look on Catherine. "That's strange, because you just mentioned earlier that she's almost 9 months old." The woman paused for a fraction of a second, the words caught in her throat. "Yes, right, almost 9 months, Catherine corrected herself, a glimmer of doubt in her gaze. "I mean, she's just a little older now. It's been a long day with the weather and all the delays." Rodriguez made a mental note of the error. It was a minor detail, but it spoke to a bigger issue of inconsistency. Then there was the baby. Rodriguez couldn't ignore the feeling that something was very wrong. Babies, especially those who are completely sleeping, usually respond to external stimuli. When there is a commotion, they stir, shift, or make little noises. But this child had stayed immobile and unresponsive, as if the sound of Luna's barking had not reached her. "Your baby's sleeping very soundly through all of this," Rodriguez said nonchalantly, but her voice betrayed her concern. "Most babies would at least stir a little from all the noise." "Is she always like this?" Catherine responded too hastily. "She's a good sleeper," she remarked, sounding more defensive than she probably intended. "It's nothing to worry about." Rodriguez examined the infant more closely. The infant's head rested on Catherine's shoulder, but the child's silence was unsettling. Babies at that age were known to produce modest, involuntary movements even when sleeping. However, this one had not flinched or even altered position in reaction to the loud barking that resonated throughout the terminal. Rodriguez was no rookie. She'd seen her fair share of weird behavior and understood when to believe her intuition. Rodriguez noticed something when Luna began to react to this woman and child. She was positive that Luna's peculiar behavior was not an accident. The dog was detecting something that Rodriguez had not yet identified. "Can you tell me which flight you're on again?" Rodriguez inquired, her tone steady but strong. "Just to confirm everything. I want to be thorough, given the delays today." Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly, and she paused for a moment before responding. "American Airlines to Chicago, and then to Denver," she said again, her words sounding more scripted this time. But Rodriguez was already on to her. "Actually, all American Airlines flights to Chicago were cancelled 2 hours ago," Rodriguez explained calmly but authoritatively. "The storm has caused massive disruptions. You might want to check your itinerary again." Catherine's expression faltered briefly. Her eyes widened slightly, and she hastily corrected herself. "Oh, I meant United," she said with a nervous giggle. "I've just been so flustered. Everything's been changing so quickly today." Rodriguez was not buying it. Catherine's inconsistency in her responses became increasingly noticeable, as did her discomfort. The way she had responded too soon, her refusal to provide the baby's documents, all of these were indicators that Rodriguez had grown to detect over time. This wasn't just a traveler having terrible luck owing to the weather, there was something darker going on here. Rodriguez took a step forward and concentrated her attention on Catherine. "Ma'am, I need to see your documents," she stated firmly. "It's part of the procedure when traveling with an infant. I'm just going to need to check everything." Catherine's face turned pale, and Rodriguez noticed a flash of panic in her eyes for the first time. She took a step back, her gaze darting frantically to the doorway. "I really don't think this is necessary," she remarked, her voice harsh with a hint of panic. "I've already explained everything. The baby's fine. She's just sleeping. Please, I need to get to my gate." Rodriguez could feel the tension rising. Catherine's behavior was becoming more unpredictable, and the baby still hadn't moved. Despite the loud barking and ruckus, the youngster stayed perfectly still. It was as if she were a doll in her mother's arms. That wasn't typical. "Catherine," Rodriguez answered gently, but her voice was harsh now. "I'm going to need to see your identification and your baby's travel documents. It's standard procedure when there's any doubt about someone's travel status, and today, with the chaos of the storm, we need to confirm everything. It won't take long." Catherine took another step back, this time with trembling hands. Rodriguez could sense fear in her eyes. "Please," Catherine begged, her voice shaking, "I just want to get to my gate. I'm already so late." Rodriguez did not answer quickly. She was no longer bothered about the delay or inconvenience. Her focus had turned completely to the kid. The lack of movement was unsettling, and she realized she couldn't ignore it any longer. "You're coming with me," Rodriguez stated firmly. "We're going to check your identification and the baby's paperwork in a quieter area. Please follow me." Catherine paused for a second before nodding and following Rodriguez. Luna, who had been silently observing the entire conversation, stayed completely still. Her amber eyes remained fixated on the kid, and her posture was tight, vigilant, and protective. As they proceeded into the quieter portion of the terminal, Rodriguez couldn't help but feel the gravity of the situation sink in. Something seemed wrong. Something wasn't right. She could sense it in her stomach and trusted her instincts, Luna's intuition. The dog had discovered something, and it was now up to Rodriguez to find out what it was. The peaceful area of the terminal stood in stark contrast to the pandemonium of the rest of the airport. The faint murmur of faraway conversations and the occasional announcement over the PA system were a far cry from the near panic of earlier times. Rodriguez led Catherine into the hallway, Luna at her side, the dog's attention never wavering. Luna took each step carefully, her head slightly inclined as she focused on the youngster in Catherine's arms. Catherine, now visibly irritated, concentrated her gaze on the floor. She stopped attempting to speak, instead focusing on creating more distance between herself and the dog. Despite her peaceful demeanor, Luna made careful to keep a distance between Catherine and the baby. Rodriguez, sensing the rising tension, realized they were treading a thin line. The woman was agitated, but there was a deeper, more disturbing undercurrent to her conduct that Rodriguez couldn't ignore. Rodriguez entered the designated place just off the main terminal, a quieter nook where security cameras could still monitor them. She had no intention of losing control of the situation, especially since so much seemed odd about it. She turned to face Catherine, who had not yet spoken. "I'm going to need to see some documentation for your baby, ma'am," Rodriguez replied, her tone stern but professional. "It's a standard procedure, and given everything that's been happening today, it's important that we follow through on this. Just a few minutes, and we'll get you on your way." Catherine shifted uncomfortably, and for the first time, Rodriguez observed her hands quivering. She continued looking over at Luna, who was standing a few feet away, her attention never leaving the infant. The dog's eyes were keen, and her stance was as vigilant as a sentinel on guard. Luna seems to be willing to do whatever it took to safeguard the child. Catherine's voice quivered as she attempted to retain control. "I told you already, her documents are in my luggage. The airline said it wasn't necessary." Rodriguez studied her intently, her instincts screaming that something was seriously wrong. When traveling by flight, newborns were always obliged to have their documents. There were no exemptions. Catherine was either unaware of the restrictions or deliberately avoided them. But what impressed out the most was how she avoided eye contact, as if something, some deep secret, was lying just beneath the surface. Rodriguez pressed on. "I understand, but this is a routine check. It's important, especially in times of high traffic, like today. We just need to confirm that everything's in order." Catherine's gaze moved toward the nearest exit, and Rodriguez saw the movement. It was subtle, yet it did not escape her attention. Catherine was pondering fleeing. Her body language had moved from uneasy to guarded, almost paranoid. Rodriguez asked a simple question that she had been thinking about for a long time. "How old is your baby, again?" Catherine paused for a while, seemingly taken off guard by the question. "She's 8 months, she responded swiftly, perhaps too quickly. Her hand reached up and pushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear in a panicked motion. But Rodriguez noticed a difference in her voice, too prepared, too robotic. Catherine's words were defensive, indicating that she was hiding something. Rodriguez took a deep breath, attempting to remain focused. The contradictions were increasing. A child that slept thus calmly despite loud barking was unusual. A mother who was unable to produce basic documents for her child was more rarer. Rodriguez had worked enough cases to know that when people tried to hide something, they frequently overcompensated with flimsy excuses. She returned her focus to the infant, who had not moved a muscle. Rodriguez said quietly, "Your baby's not moving at all. Most infants would at least stir from the noise, wouldn't they?" Catherine stiffened visibly, her face burning an unsettling red. "She's a very good sleeper," she remarked, almost too quickly, as if she was trying to hide her anxiety. "She's always been like this. Very calm." Rodriguez was not convinced. She had seen babies sleep comfortably in noisy situations, but they continued to make involuntary movements. But this child, this baby, was unique. The baby was entirely still, which Rodriguez found odd. She focused her attention back on Catherine. "Can I ask you a few more questions?" Rodriguez's tone softened significantly. "When you first arrived, you mentioned American Airlines. But now you're saying you're flying with United. That's a bit confusing, don't you think?" Catherine's face stiffened at the inquiry, and her gaze shifted away. "I'm sorry," she said, sounding a little defensive. "It's been such a long day. The storm has thrown off my entire schedule, and I'm not thinking clearly." Rodriguez was not buying it. Catherine's inconsistent responses, uneasy glances, and attempts to avoid basic queries were adding up to something far more than a missed trip. There was something here that did not add up. And she was coming near to the truth. Luna, ever vigilant, let up a low, quiet whine, expressing her persistent alertness. The dog stayed in her position, watching carefully at the infant in Catherine's arms. Rodriguez felt an increasing feeling of desperation. Something was very wrong, and Luna's instincts were leading her to the truth. Rodriguez stared at Catherine once again, her words gentle yet forceful. "Ma'am, I need to see the baby's identification now. I know you said it was in your checked luggage, but I can't let this go any longer. I need to confirm the child's identity, and I need to do it now." Catherine's eyes tightened and her breathing increased. The anxiety in the air was palpable. Rodriguez could tell Catherine was no longer playing along. She was being cornered, and her next action would decide everything. Catherine, with a shaking hand, began to pull the infant closer to her bosom, jerky and protective. But Rodriguez noticed it, the slightest change in her mood. She was becoming desperate. The fractures in her facade began to appear. Catherine rushed toward the exit, her eyes furious. "Please, just let me go," she begged. "We're late. I need to get to my gate. The baby is fine." Before Rodriguez could speak, Luna reacted. The dog leapt into action, her body tense and alert, placing herself between Catherine and the entrance. She did not bark. She did not lunge. She merely remained there, as if to say, "You're not leaving." Her protective demeanor was clear. Rodriguez moved ahead, her voice firm and unwavering. "Catherine, you're not going anywhere until we sort this out. I'm going to need you to stay here." Catherine froze. When she gazed down at Luna, Rodriguez noticed genuine terror in her eyes for the first time. She was not terrified by the dog's bark or her conduct. Rather, Luna's eyes were filled with conviction. Luna was not just a dog. She wasn't simply a trained K9 cop. Luna was something else. Luna was a truth seeker, and she was well aware of what was going on. "I'm sorry, but you need to accompany me," Rodriguez continued. "We need to go to the security office. You're being detained until we verify everything." Catherine's mouth became dry. I can't," she faltered, her voice lacking conviction. Her shields were collapsing, and she knew it. Rodriguez gave Luna a tiny nod, instructing the dog to remain in place. Luna's amber eyes never left Catherine, and the dog's presence served as a subtle deterrent to her escape. "She seems to realize there was no way out now. I need your cooperation," Rodriguez stated as she took another step forward. "This is for the safety of your child. Please, just come with me." Catherine stared down at the baby in her arms, and her expression softened for a brief moment. However, the hardness returned nearly quickly. "She's fine," Catherine said quietly, almost as if trying to convince herself. "She's just sleeping." But Rodriguez knew better. She could see the terror in Catherine's eyes, which Luna had detected seconds before. It was fear of being caught, of the truth being revealed. Luna, with her strong instincts, had already detected the threat. It was now up to Rodriguez to unearth it. There was no turning back. Rodriguez had seen dread on many faces throughout her job. Catherine's terror, however, had a distinct unnerving quality. It was more than just the dread of being caught, it was the fear of losing something valuable. Catherine's clutching the infant to her chest as if it were the last thing she had left showed more than she intended. Rodriguez caught a glimpse of desperation, a mother's desperate attempt to hang on to what she knew she would lose. At the same time, Rodriguez realized the truth: this was not Catherine's kid. Something wasn't right. Something much darker was unfolding. Luna had already recognized the symptoms of danger. Rodriguez realized now that Luna wasn't just barking at a disturbance. She was barking at a falsehood. A mother who was not a mother. A child who was not hers. Catherine was now cornered. She couldn't keep up the pretense much longer. She was well aware that the truth was being revealed. Luna's piercing amber eyes never left her, and the dog's posture was protective and unwavering. Luna appeared to have already solved the puzzle and was only waiting for Rodriguez to catch up. "I'm not going to make this difficult for you," Rodriguez stated calmly but forcefully. "But I need to see the baby's identification. I can't let you leave without confirming who she is." Catherine paused for a time, her breathing shallow. Her fingers trembled, as if she was about to flee, but Luna's gaze stopped her. There was no escaping. The dog had sealed her fate, standing guard in front of the exit with the quiet authority of a creature trained to detect the truth, no matter how hard a person attempted to disguise it. Rodriguez moved closer, her voice quiet but firm. "If you're not willing to show me the baby's documents, I'm going to have to take this further. I'm going to have to call for assistance." Catherine's eyes shifted uneasily, and she swallowed hard. The air was tense enough to cut with a knife. This atmosphere was caused by something other than the storm outside or the turmoil at the airport. Something darker. Luna had already recognized this and had attempted to communicate it through her conduct. I don't have them," Catherine said, her voice shaking under the strain. "I don't have anything. Just, please, let me go." Rodriguez's countenance softened slightly, but her determination did not waver. "We need to confirm the baby's identity, Catherine. For her safety, we need to know who she is. You can't just walk away without providing that." Catherine's face became pallid. Rodriguez comprehended the woman's state of panic at that point. There was something very wrong about this arrangement, and the more Catherine refused, the more suspicious Rodriguez became. Rodriguez's training kicked in. She had been in innumerable high-pressure situations before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just about a missing document or a trip delay, it was much more ominous. And she needed to find it before it was too late. Without waiting for an answer, Rodriguez signaled for Luna to remain still and walked towards her radio. She requested backup, asking another officer to assist with the problem. "We need to verify the child's identity immediately. Please send someone to meet us." Rodriguez moved closer to Catherine while waiting for an answer, attempting to keep a calm manner. "Catherine, this doesn't have to be difficult. If you cooperate, we'll get this sorted quickly. But if you continue to avoid the situation, we'll have to escalate things further." Catherine's gaze flashed around the room, searching for an exit, but there was none. Luna's vigilant gaze followed Catherine's every move, and the dog appeared to be reading her mind. Luna seemed to feel the woman's intentions and was determined to prevent any escape. Then something happened. Catherine let her guard down for just a second. She stared down at the baby in her arms, her emotions shifting between dread and tenderness. It was as if she realized the game was over. For a brief time, Rodriguez observed Catherine's genuine emotion, fear of being apprehended, dread of losing the kid in her arms, and grief over the truth about to be exposed. Catherine acted before Rodriguez could say anything else. In one rapid gesture, she drew the infant closer to her chest, and Rodriguez noticed the woman's gaze change from desperation to something darker, something threatening. But Luna had seen it coming. The German shepherd sprung into action, putting herself between Catherine and the escape. Luna did not make an aggressive move, like as lunging or growling. Instead, she stood there, poised, her gaze fixed on Catherine with silent determination. It was as if Luna knew the truth was about to be revealed, and she was not going to let Catherine avoid it. Rodriguez moved forward, obstructing Catherine's path. "You're not leaving," she stated firmly. "We're going to get to the bottom of this." Now, give me the baby's identification. You need to cooperate, or this will only get harder for you. Catherine's face twisted with emotion, and for a brief moment, she appeared to break. Please, she said softly, her voice scarcely audible. I just wanted him back. I didn't know what else to do. Rodriguez felt his heart skip a beat. She'd heard enough. It wasn't simply the identity that went missing. This was the truth. Catherine, or rather Jessica, was more than just a mother seeking to travel with her child. She had taken someone else's child, and that child was in terrible danger. I'm going to need you to come with me, Rodriguez continued, her voice firm but full of reality. We're going to the security office now. We need to get this sorted out, and I'm going to help you, but you need to cooperate. If you don't, things will only escalate. Catherine's gaze shifted between dread and shame, but the emotional facade she had been keeping up was beginning to break. I'm sorry, she muttered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't know where to turn. I just wanted him back. Rodriguez's thoughts were racing. It was evident now. Catherine was not her true name. Jessica Morris, the woman in front of her, had just been discharged from a psychiatric facility after a lengthy involuntary commitment. Jessica's illusions had caused her to believe that her child had been taken away from her, and in her desperation, she had stolen her sister's daughter, Sophia Mills, and was attempting to flee alongside her. Rodriguez recalled an instance from a year ago. Luna had also been involved in that case, which had completely altered the lives of both the dog and Rodriguez. Luna had been discovered guarding a child's body in a home invasion, fiercely protecting the girl even after the tragedy had occurred. The dog had endured a horrible loss that day, but it had shaped her into the wonderful canine she is today. Luna's ability to detect when a youngster was in danger, when something was amiss, had saved numerous lives. Now it was time to save Sophia Mills. Rodriguez's radio crackled, and a new officer's voice emerged. We've got confirmation on the baby's identity. The child is not Catherine's. She's Sophia Mills, reported missing yesterday. Her mother, Claire Mills, is on her way here. The news struck Rodriguez like a wave. Jessica had stolen her sister's infant, sedated her for the voyage, and was attempting to exit the state. However, they were unaware of the extent of the manipulation that had occurred. Jessica had used her illusions to justify her acts, believing that the system had taken her child away. Rodriguez turned to Catherine, now Jessica, and spoke gently but authoritatively. We know who you are, Jessica. And we know what you've done. You're not getting away with this. Jessica's face fell as she knew the truth was out. Jessica's eyes dilated in amazement as the full force of Rodriguez's words struck her. For a few minutes, she stood transfixed, her hold tightening around the baby, as if trying to shield the child from the very people attempting to aid her. However, the mask she had worn for so long, the controlled, confident lady who had managed to deceive everyone around her, was tearing apart in real time. Luna, ever cautious, stood firm between Jessica and the exit, her eyes bright and alert. The dog's calm yet powerful presence said volumes. The truth had been revealed, and Jessica had no choice but to face it. I don't understand, Jessica said quietly, her voice quivering with disbelief. I didn't do anything wrong. I just wanted him back. I wanted to be a mother again. I didn't know how to fix this. I couldn't. She trailed off, her words growing unintelligible as she attempted to excuse her actions. Rodriguez, while sympathetic, realized there was no space for mercy in this situation. Jessica, you took your sister's child, she replied forcefully, her voice full of finality. You didn't just take a baby, you took a life, a family's life. Sophia isn't your child. And you've put her in danger. Jessica's face was filled with shame, perplexity, and desperation, yet the gravity of her actions was equally evident. She had stolen her sister's daughter, sedated her for the voyage, and was attempting to depart the state using forged documents to start a new life, one that was not hers to have. Rodriguez could see how profoundly Jessica was consumed by her delusions, but there was no justification for her actions. Sophia Mills, the kid in her arms, was innocent in all of this, and it was Rodriguez's responsibility to ensure her safe return to her rightful home. Jessica's hands trembled, her gaze drawn to Luna, who remained totally focused on her. The dog's position was firm, as if it had become a symbol of the truth standing before her. Luna was not only there to physically defend the child, she had already exposed Jessica's deception, which had kept her clinging to a false sense of control over a situation she couldn't change. I didn't know what to do," Jessica said, her voice quivering. "I just wanted my son back. I thought I could take her, I could make her mine. She looks just like him. She looks like my Charlie. I thought, if I could just get far enough away, they couldn't stop me." Rodriguez's heart wrenched, but she knew it was not the time for compassion. Jessica had been duped by her own pain, by a man who took advantage of her emotional state. Dr. Nathan Chambers, a psychiatrist who exploited her delusions and assisted her in carrying out this plan, was the ultimate architect of this tragedy. He had told her tales about losing her son, convinced her that the system had taken him unfairly. But now the truth was coming out, and the harm had already been done. Jessica's fantasies had cost her everything, and now she must face the consequences. She could feel Jessica's sadness in her eyes, but she also realized that the time for reconciliation was past. The harm done to Sophia and her family was legal as well as emotional, and empathy alone could not erase it. "Jessica," Rodriguez said softly, but with firmness, "you need to come with us. We're taking you to the security office where you'll be detained. The baby will be taken for medical evaluation. And then we'll sort this out. Your sister is on her way, and we'll make sure Sophia gets back to her. She's safe now. You don't have to worry about her." But Jessica, visibly overwhelmed, stepped back. "No," she said quietly, shaking her head. "I can't go back. I can't. I'll lose her. I'll lose my Charlie again. I'll lose everything." Rodriguez moved closer, gently pulling her away from the exit. "You already lost him, Jessica. And you've lost yourself in this lie. But you haven't lost Sophia yet. She's not yours, and you have to let her go. You have to let her be with the people who love her. The people who are going to take care of her." As Jessica was led to the security office, Rodriguez couldn't help but feel the gravity of what had just happened. The truth had been revealed, but it had taken its toll on all parties concerned. Jessica felt as if her entire life had unraveled. The sadness of losing her kid, Dr. Chambers' deception, and the delusions that had clouded her mind had driven her to commit an inconceivable murder. But as Rodriguez stared at the infant in Jessica's arms, she realized Luna had spared the child. Luna's amazing capacity to discern when anything was wrong, as well as her ability to sense emotional anguish in others, had helped to reveal the truth. Luna's instincts had guided Rodriguez through the investigation of this convoluted case, and Luna's attentiveness had kept Sophia safe despite the dangers she faced. As paramedics arrived to transport Sophia for medical evaluation, Rodriguez observed Luna by her side, her gaze following the kid as she was carefully handled by the medical team. The dog's body language changed little, but her look expressed quiet happiness. She had finished her duty. She had safeguarded the child, now the healing process could begin. Rodriguez returned his gaze to Jessica, who was now prisoner and shedding tears freely. The gravity of her crime was now seeping in. But there was no going back now. The system would deal with her, and she would bear the repercussions of the life she had chosen. As they approached the security office, Detective Harmon of the Special Victims Unit came, his countenance serious as he examined the preliminary report. "The woman's real name is Jessica Morris," he said, giving Rodriguez the information on his tablet. "She was recently released from Lakewood Psychiatric Hospital, after 6 months of involuntary commitment. She's been suffering from severe postpartum psychosis ever since the death of her infant son from SIDS 6 months ago. Rodriguez nodded, absorbing the information. It made sense now. Dr. Chambers had used Jessica's anguish and sadness to trick her into believing that her sister's baby was her own. He had used her frailty, feeding her fantasies that would eventually lead her to this point. Meanwhile, Sophia's biological mother, Claire Mills, had arrived at the hospital to reconnect with her daughter. When Rodriguez saw Claire stoop down to embrace Sophia, she shed tears of relief. Despite the deception, the attachment between mother and kid remained strong and pure. The reunion was bittersweet. Claire hugged her daughter tightly, her arms quivering as she whispered words of comfort into Sophia's ears. "I've got you, sweetheart. I've got you," she repeated. Rodriguez stood back, her heart full with pride and grief. The job had been completed. The truth was revealed. Sophia was safe. As the evening drew to a close, Rodriguez sat at her desk, going over the final case report. Luna, fatigued by the day's events, rested at her feet with her head resting on the floor and her eyes half closed in comfortable sleep. The dog had earned some rest. Rodriguez stared down at Luna, full of gratitude. "You did good, girl," she said quietly. Luna's ears perked at the sound of her words, and their gazes briefly met. There was a secret understanding between them, a kinship formed through shared tragedy and the pursuit of truth. Rodriguez understood that their work was far from over. There will always be new cases and obstacles, but tonight, they had earned their peace. And as Luna rested quietly by her side, Rodriguez mused on the wonderful link that exists between humans and their four-legged companions. Sometimes it wasn't just about solving the case, it was also about healing for both the rescuer and the victim. Rodriguez turned off her desk lamp and rose up, approaching Luna. "You did good today," she said again, brushing her fingers through the dog's fur. "We both did." And with that, the case was closed. But Rodriguez would never forget what they had discovered, the wonderful link between handler and K9, as well as the extraordinary talents of a service dog like Luna.